guys, let's crack on. I'm not going to wait any more time. It's already 6 to 7 minutes. So let's go ahead and find out what is Elastic Block Store and what we can do with it and what is all the things that Amazon is offering for Elastic Block Store. All right. So if you remember the demo or the introduction class, I might have shown you a slide which is giving you the offering of Amazon for especially for storage. What are all the different offerings that you see for storage? I'm just going to a similar slide to refresh your memory and also to see where Elastic Block Store comes into picture when we are having the whole group of services that Amazon offers. So this is the slide that I'm referring to. You can see the first group, Amazon S3, Glacier, and EBS, and finally EFS. So today in particular, we are going to talk about the third group of services, that is Amazon EBS, which is an elastic block store. Block storage for your compute instances or your servers. You can think of it as an externally attached storage, that is like think of it like a NetApp or EMC storage attached to your server, but it is a very crude analogy, I should say, because the data and the disks and the performance, all that is differs from compared to an externally attached to storage. What I mean by that is I will just show you in the next few slides and also explain what it means, because with the pictorial representation it makes more sense. So once again, storage choices in block storage, you can see Amazon EC2 Instant Store is also there, and Amazon EBS is also there. We will talk about Instant Store later in this session, but majority of the time we are going to spend with EBS because that is what most customers use, and Instant Store is just an temporal ephemeral storage. That is what Amazon calls it. It is a temporary storage, in other words, as I would like to say, and it is not much useful for most of the purposes. Just for some quick computing, think of an additional extra sheet of memory that you have access to. So as I said, what is EBS? EBS, you can think of it as an external disk, but it is not an external disk. EBS volumes, I'm going to refer it as EBS volumes from here onwards. That is easier to refer. In other words, it means Elastic Block Store. So this Elastic Block Store, if you remember, there are availability zones in each region, and when you create an EBS volume, these volumes are specific to that availability zone. So if you want to move that from one availability zone to another zone, it is not directly possible. You need to take a snapshot, put it into an S3 bucket, and then move from one S3 bucket to another S3 bucket. My apologies for the guys who are not familiar with S3. Probably the next session after EBS, I will talk about S3. S3 is an can think of it as an FTP storage or a file storage for Amazon. So if you are creating an EBS volume and want to move it from one availability zone to another one, then you need to use an S3 bucket. If you don't have multiple availability zones, then you can use EBS directly to your instance. That is what is shown here. You can have one external disk or multiple external disks, or you can have any number that is available for you, and as you need it, you can assign it to your EC2 compute instance. For this session or this training purposes, since we have not seen what is EC2, just think of it as a server. That's it. Elastic Compute is nothing but your server unit. So we have 3 volumes attached to your server here. That is a pictorial representation. So, and it also is independent of the EC2 instance. What that means is, once you detach it from the server, the data and whatever information that is available in your EBS is persistent. It doesn't go away. So you can take this disk and assign it to another server and start using it. So let us look at it in a little bit more details. So here you see there is an EC2 instance which was previously running and become faulty for some reason. There might be a hardware failure, or there might be a number of causes for that. For example, you moved from application group from one version to another version. So instead of upgrading, what you did was you created another EC2 instance here and install your latest application, and you want to connect it to your data which is in the external EBS. So what you do is you detach from this instance, you attach it to this instance. It is just a few clicks when you want to detach an EBS volume and then attach it to another server. So that is simple as that. If you want to move data from one server to another server, you just detach and then reattach to an instance. This is what Amazon means by persist independently of an EC2 instance. So you always need to remember the data that is stored in an EBS volume is persistent. Sometimes there are interview questions on that, like how do you move data from one server to another server? Will you use the networks? Will you use an EBS volume? Will you use an S3? I would say if EBS is available, use EBS. It is the IO performance is higher and it is inside your networks. If you move it to an S3 and then copy the data back from S3, then that means that there is more bandwidth cost that is involved for sending the data out of your EC to VPC and bringing it back again. So your answer should be I will use EBS volumes, and if EBS is not enough, for example, you want to move terabytes of data are very huge, then only you will look at S3 as an option to move data. So, so let us look at in real time how do we create it. So I talked about. I mean, this topic is very simple. So let us do a hands-on as well as theory together. So I'm going to just go and show you how to create your EBS volumes in the console. Mr. Shuhan, I think you have not seen me log in or register. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to log out and show you how to register. I mean, how to log in again, so you can catch up a little bit. So this is typically the URL that you will start your day with AWS, that is aws.amazon.com, and sign up. I will come back to that later. So if you are coming back after you sign up, so you will use this option. Are you seeing my screen? I guess not.
Got stuck from EBS.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, thanks.
Let me see if I can fix that. Just give me one moment. The controls are frozen. Yeah, great. Now I think you can see my screen. Okay. So aws.console.com is the primary URL that you will go. You don't have to remember any other URL, just this one. And then for signing up, you will have to use this choice. It will usually ask you username, password, and your credit card to know that you are a human and you are not trying to do some mischievous activities in Amazon. And once your credit card is validated, your account will be activated within about 3-4 hours, or I usually see it happening almost instantaneously. But in that case, if your credit card is not validated, it might take more time. So since I am already logged in, my cookie is already there, so Amazon thinks that I clicked on the wrong link and throws me back into the login page. So if you are a returning user, what we usually do is my account and go to AWS Management Console. So I have my username and password already, and I have created different accounts, and this account that I'm using is for training. So I'm just logging in with my user ID for this training and entering my password. Usually all accounts have something called a root account, which is like a master account. You can do everything and anything with that user ID, and it is never advisable to log in with that user ID. You are expected to create sub user IDs or admin user IDs and roles, and then you are expected to log in with those user IDs. So likewise, I have logged in with a user ID which is having less privileges than my root user account. We will talk about it more in detail when we are looking at the next session, which is IAM, Identity and Access Management. So today let us continue with Elastic Block Store. So if you are not sure where the service comes from, these are all the list of services AWS offers. And if you are not aware where Elastic Block Store comes or any service where it comes, you just start typing it here. Amazon will take care of the rest. So I'm not sure where Elastic Block Store is, so I'm going to type it here. And Amazon says it has put Elastic Block Store under EC2. The reason is it quite often Elastic Block Store deals with the server and it doesn't stay outside without any purpose. I mean, you cannot read or write data to it EBS directly. So it is makes more sense logically to put it here. So here, if I scroll down to the left hand side, you see Amazon EC2 dashboard, and then let me minimize these things, which is not necessary for us right now. So you can see here Elastic Block Store is there, and then there are two options, volumes and snapshots. So what I'm going to do is I am needing a new volume. So I'm going to click on this one and let it refresh. So you can see there is already one volume in my account. The reason is I'll show you why there is a volume. If I click on instances, I just before the session today we started, I created an instance for showing the volumes. So I created a server and each server needs a root disk and that root disk usually comes from a EBS volume. So here also we should be able to see whether what is my EBS, whether it is an optimized disk. If it is not, it will say false here. You will find just general information about the servers. We'll talk about this later, but let us focus only on EBS volumes for today. So you have the training instance, that is the instance name, and this is the volume ID. So for creation of volumes, what I do is I simply go and click on this big blue button which says create volume. So click on that. It asks me few options. Down the slides, I'll tell you what each of these options are. For now, let us say general purpose. I have what this means is this is IO optimized and this is for cold storage and very slow IO operation. This is throughput operation, that is mostly read operation is optimized, and magnetic is very slow and very cheap disks that are available. That is what it means, and there is some more information to share. I will share it down the line. And what is the size of disks that you want to create? You can create from minimum of 1 GB to a maximum of about 16 terabytes. In my opinion, that is a huge amount of storage that you can create at a single time. I don't want to have a huge bill in my account, so I'm just going to stop with 10 GB. You are welcome to do when you're doing your testing or demo at any number up to 16 terabytes. But if you don't want to have a bill shock, say something like 5 GB or 10 GB or 30 GB. 30 GB is the max you can go as a free user. But in production or in enterprise customers, usually the disk sizes vary from something like 100 GB to 500 GB, depending upon the applications. What I typically see is about 50 to 100 GB is quite often customers use. And then it is asking me whether I want to IO optimize it. For when you choose general purpose, you don't get to choose this one, but if I'm going to say provisioned IOPS, it will allow me to choose what is the maximum IOPS that per second. That is nothing but input output operations per second. That is what IOPS means. So how much of bytes that you're going to write and how much of bytes that you're going to read per second. That is what IOPS means. So let us go and stick with general purpose, because for most of your day-to-day experimentation or a demo or very simple applications, general purpose is fine. But if you're using a lot of analytics or say movie streaming, then you need to think about doing a provisioned IOPS or throughput optimized disk. So we talked about these three, and throughput, as I said, in general purpose, you are not allowed to customize this one. Guys, are we having technical issues logging in and staying here? I see people jumping in and out. As I said some time back, it is disconcerting for me to see people jumping in and out in the middle of the class. So, as I said, it is availability zone specific. So I need to be careful of what I'm choosing here, because I need to check what is my instance running. If you remember, I'm having an instance running, and are you able to see this? It says availability zone AP South 1A. So if I want to attach a new volume to that existing instance, then I need to create a volume in that availability zone. So since the instance is in 1A, I'm going to start my volume also in 1A, and it is asking me a snapshot ID. That, in other words, it means, do I want to copy data from an existing snapshot from the market? It is giving me a lot of list of snapshots. So if I don't know the name, I can type something like, I don't remember anything. So let us try something like Ubuntu, if it is there. No, it is not there. You need to know the snapshot ID. So for example, your company might have created, or some third parties might have created a snapshots which you can reuse. For example, what happens usually is people create a lot of demos or workable code and create it into a snapshot, and you can copy that snapshot and reuse them directly. So it is asking me whether I want to create a snapshot. I'm going to say that I don't need a snapshot with which I want to create a volume. I leave it as it is. And the final is whether I want to encrypt this volume. So I'm going to leave this as empty, and we'll come back and see what it means. All it takes is just this one. I'll tell you what it means, and we will do that later. Let us click on create. That's it. We have created our first EBS volume, which is of 10 GB, and you will see the status changing slowly. Wait a second. I clicked on something. Okay. So you can see this one spinning, and it is getting created. When it is getting created, you will see it in ready for use state. As of now, it is in creating state. This status will change after some time. So let us get created. Then we can assign it to a server. So far, are we good? Is there any issues? Okay. So is it refreshing? Yeah. So you see, guys, now it says it is in available state. So this volume is ready to be used. So how do I use this now? It is standing alone separately in my account. It is not attached to any server, and I cannot read or write to that. So what I do is I select on this volume, and it gives me all this information, which is just for checking whether the volume is in good health or not. So you can create tags to that, so that you remember what is this. When I say create a tag, click on name. This is train EBS demo volume. You can write anything here, or without using special characters. You can have up to 255 characters, if I'm not wrong, to make it as descriptive as possible. And you can have multiple tags also. Say for example, I can have one more tag which says environment. I will say this is dev, or let us say test, and click on save. This, whenever I want to search for this volume, I can even use this tags to search for it. See here, it says filter by tags and attributes. So when you have multiple volumes and you don't remember which volume that you're searching for, and if you remember the tags, then I can use this to search for that. And you see, I clicked on demo, and I typed demo and I searched for it, and you are able to search for this volume. So now I want to attach it to an instance. So what I do is I found the volume that I want to attach, I select it, and then move to actions, and then I say attach volume. So it is giving me the volume name, and it is asking me which instance I want to attach. Once again, I don't remember my instance ID, because usually you need to put an instance ID or a name tag. So I'm going to click on that, and what happens is Amazon nicely lists me all the running instances. I have currently only one instance running, so it is easy for me to choose. Think of hundreds of instances running. So in that case, what I can do is, once again, I can start typing here, and Amazon will pick it up for me and shortlist it. It works in a very nice way. So it is very easy to find out your instance. If you don't remember your instance, you can always, if you can see my mouse, you can always go to here, instances, and find out what is your instance ID and what is the tag. Either one of them will do, and start typing it here. Amazon will pick it up for you. So I'm going to select this instance, and Amazon says it will be mounted as SDF in my server. So I have already logged into my server here, my instance. This is an Amazon instance. So if you are able to see my screen, you can see that there is only one root disk and it is of 10 GB, and there are no other disks available, which is called SDF. So if I do ls block, you don't need to remember these commands, but it helps to remember. If I do an ls block, it says only xvda, that is only one disk is available. So let us go ahead and attach our volume there. So I'm going to click on attach. It takes about a minute or so for some time to get it attached, and once again you can see there the status has changed from available to in use. That means that you cannot attach the EBS volume to more than one instance at the same time. So I have attached it to an instance called training instance. So if I want to attach it to say for example production instance, I need to detach it from the first one and then reattach it to the new one. And you can see some more additional information is there, the attachment information. You see that here. So if you remember, if you noticed it, it said attaching and then it said attached now, if you notice the difference. But anyway, now it should be ready for us to see it here. Let us do ls block. And if you notice the difference, we have something called this now available for us to be mounting, to mount. So I'm just going to create a directory. If you guys are not familiar, I'll show you df-h as well. You will not see the volume mounted anywhere here. Just to ask a quick question, I know Mr. Duray has a little bit of experience with PLSQL, DB, and Linux, so he might, I'm assuming he's familiar with disks and mounting. How about Strujan? Oh, what is your background, Strujan, so that I can explain it to you?
My background is all Solaris and X.
Awesome. I don't even have to talk about these things then, mounting and creating directories then.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Vamsi, you are with the three-part storage, so you know about mounting and all those things. Anil, how about you?
I have background of Linux and AIX.
Okay, well, great then. We have guys with the Linux experience, so I'll just start and then go ahead and create a directory and mount it. Let us not waste time then. And if you will have to pardon me if I'm making a mistake, I don't do this regularly nowadays. Mounting, I have a team of guys who do this. So if I have a syntax error, let me know, guys. How about there is one more person called Mahendra. Are you also familiar with mounting and everything?
Actually, I'm a logic admin, but I know about this concept.
WebLogic. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah. Who's this? Narendra. Yeah, go ahead, Narendra.
my background is
Okay.
Linux and VMware.
Okay, awesome. Linux and VMware. I'm just making a note, 1 second.
Okay.
So what do I see here? I'm saying it is write protected and it is not allowing me to mount. I need to find out why it is write protected. Okay, 1 second. I'm just looking at what is the problem with why it wouldn't mount. Just give me one moment. data from one server, one region to, one data center to another data center without too much of difficulty. Let us create another server and try to mount it and see whether we can see this file, whatever our data. So let me go back to my presentation, or let me go back to this snapshot volume and see whether it is created. I'm going to volumes. Guys, anybody having any difficulty, or I'm confusing you guys so far? Just a quick check, yes, no on the chat will help me. If I have to slow down or show something again, or most of you familiar with the data and I'm going too slow for you. I'd appreciate some feedback so that I can adjust my pace accordingly. Okay, great, 2 people are at least good. So you can see here my new volume is created in availability zone 1B and it is available for use, whereas my previous, this is my root volume for my server. You can see this is my root volume and this is the volume I have attached. So in case if you feel that too much are there, sometimes you can customize it. Let us remove the IOPS. Let us create a date. I will remove that alarm state. I will remove that monitoring. I will remove that for temporary purpose so that we don't have to scroll too much. So I wanted to show you this one and I wanted to show you this one. So this is my 10 GB root volume disk. This is the volume that I created to show you, and I snapshotted it and I created this volume. So I can say this is my parent and this is my child. And I have not named it anything here. So we can have some user-friendly names by double-clicking here and say snapshot from volume AZ1A. Something I'm just giving it to remember that this volume is coming from the data came from AZ1A. So that is there. I need to create another server to mount it. We will do that a little while. Let me go back to my presentation and let us see what else we can do with snapshots. There is one more important thing that you need to remember when we are talking about snapshots. Did it refresh? Yeah, great. So when you're doing a snapshot, what usually Amazon does is it stops all the I/O. If it doesn't stop all the I/O, for example, if you're doing a snapshot on a database instance or a database server, it is your responsibility to flush all the I/O and lock all the tables. In other words, no I/O should be happening. As the word says, it is a snapshot. Everything which is on that memory is dumped into another disk in a flash, and then a volume is created for you. So at that point of time, if there is an I/O happening or a half-written file is there or a lock is there on a particular file, that will create inconsistencies in your snapshot and you will have difficulties in mounting that volume and retrieving all the data. So it is always and almost always recommended that you stop or QoS I/O, as it says here. That is the technical word for that. In database, you flush it and lock the tables, and files in file systems you sync it and do an FS freeze, and then you snapshot all your volumes. And then whenever your snapshot volume, if you remember, the status says returns a success, then you can start using your volume again. And as always, as I said, if you're snapshotting an entire 16 GB, it takes about a snapshot of about 1 TB volume. Amazon is so quick in doing that, but still you need to stop your I/O when you're taking snapshots. And if you're not doing that, you might create inconsistencies, but it is still, you can do it, but it is not recommended to do it. That is how I would put it. So this is another trick question they ask you in the interviews. How do you take a snapshot of a database server? So you tell them I'll stop the I/O and then I'll take a snapshot and then I restart the I/O. You can do that by stopping your application server traffic, or in a database level you can introduce a lock on all the tables and then you do that. So depending upon how you want to do that and how your company wants to do it. But stop your I/O all the time to have a consistent snapshots. So now we have taken snapshots. What do I do with them? As I told you, we can remember we had this EBS volume, and we created a snapshot, and we moved it to another availability zone. But in this example, the diagram that you see there, I can also move it to another region. And if I want to move it to another region, you need to see the symbol here. This is an S3 bucket. I'm going to copy it from one region to another region bucket, and then I'm going to create a volume from there. But in our example or demo, I'm going to show it to how to move it to another availability zone. What else I can do? I can create a from a snapshot. I can create an AMI. An AMI is nothing but another server image. Let us say your snapshot is having a root volume snapshot. This is, and if it is a root volume, then I can create an instance from that root volume and start another server in my availability zone. So in other words, let us say you created a server and customized it completely. You installed WordPress, you installed MySQL, you installed some administrative tools, and everything is ready to use. Now you want to share this image to your customers or your other teams. Then what you want to do? You want to give them the instructions, or you can give them a snapshot of your volume, and they can create an army from that and start a server from that. So all your configurations, all your customizations are instantly passed on from your volume snapshot to the server directly. So this is one of the other purposes customers use it, is they build a dev environment to do all their testing, and when they want to move into production, or in other words do a cutover, they do this. They take a snapshot and restore it in the production environment, and all the configurations that you have done in your dev and tested and fine is already in production. You don't have to rebuild anything in production. So for cutovers, migrations, or pushing data to clients, this is helpful. That is why, if you remember, there are some public snapshots are also available that you can use. Where are we with the time now? We are almost close. Okay, I have done almost most of it. So we talked about snapshots, and we are going to talk about encryption now. If you remember, I did not tick this mark in the beginning. So if you want to do encryption for your servers, I'm sorry, not servers. If you want to do encryption for your EBS volumes, all you have to do this is do the check mark. Let us go back to the console and try to create another volume which you can encrypt it. It is as simple as you see here. I'm just going to create a 1 GB disk, and then let it be in Asia Pacific. I'm not going to give anything there. Let it be, as this is the saying, this is what I was saying. Sometimes see, for example, Windows Spanish installation media is there. Somebody has created a Windows installation for Spanish and given it for use. So when you create an instance from this snapshot, or when you create an AMI from the snapshot, you are getting a Spanish installation by default, and some customizations which that person might have done, and usually some charges will be applicable when you start using them, and it will when you start using them, it will prompt you saying that this is the license that you are incurring, and Amazon will bill you for that in your billing. So let us leave that empty, and I'm going to just check this box. It is as simple as that, guys. You don't have to manage the keys, you don't have to do anything. And what is Amazon asking me in this box is what key I want to use in encryption. Usually encryption has a master key for encryption, and all the data will be encrypted using the master key. So if I'm going to say, Amazon, use your master key by default and encrypt it for me. If I don't want Amazon to use its own key, what I need to do is I need to upload my key into Amazon and say, Amazon, use that key, and it will come in that drop down list. By default, I have not having any key, so it shows me only this option. So let me leave it as it is, and let us click on create. And technically, what I've seen is usually in the conventional data centers or conventional models, encryption introduces small performance impact in the volumes, especially in databases and operating systems. But what Amazon says is encryption is truly transparent. You don't see a performance impact by encrypting and volume. That is, encrypting and decrypting happens on the fly on your EC2 instance, and you don't see a performance impact because of enabling encryption. So it still says creating. Okay, great. It moved from creating to available as we speak. So in this disk, you will see here, if you remember, these are all not encrypted and this one is encrypted. Okay, refreshed, yeah. You see this latest volume that we created is encrypted and it is showing me what key, what ID. I clicked on the wrong one, 1 second. I wanted to expand this one. So it's giving me an ID. It is not the entire key itself. It is giving me the ID for the key, and it is saying that this volume is encrypted with this ID, and this is the alias name or user-friendly name that I have created for the key itself. So if you mount this or create a snapshot from this or share it, it will always be encrypted. So if you're giving it to your customers, you need to give them the key as well for them to decrypt it. Otherwise, nobody, even if you lose the key, you will not be able to retrieve the data which is in this volume. So always remember that encryption introduces an additional management thinking. That is, when you're creating a snapshot, and if you're moving to a region, a different region, that region also should have access to the same encrypted keys. That is why it is better to leave Amazon to do the key management mostly, so that Amazon will take the key and distribute it to all your regions. But if you do it and miss it out to another region and try to mount it to a server, you will not be able to mount and read that volume. So that is all about encryption Amazon EBS volume is to offer. So you check this box at the bottom. I'm in the presentation and you check this bottom at the bottom and it will ask you what are the keys that you want to use, and you choose the keys and click on create. So as I have created in a different color here, that is very, very important, at least in a technical person. I like that point, no volume performance impact, because whenever I created a volume or in a database in Oracle or DB2 in AIX, there is a considerable performance impact I have seen in my life. And this is another point that I said, all snapshots are encrypted. So any snapshots that you create or share will also have the encryption enabled. So keep that in mind. This is another interview question. Let's move on. What else is there in encryption? This is a very verbose slide, the next one, if I remember it correctly. You don't have to read all these things. There are two types of key management, that is the default key or custom key. That is what you need to remember here. And remember, the data key is never stored to the disk in plain text. Even if you upload your key, Amazon encrypts the key with its own key and writes it to a disk. So that is what they mean by saying the key is never stored as plain text and your key is always secure with Amazon's own encryption. Okay, okay. We talked about creation now. We talked about encryption. We talked about resizing. We talked about snapshots. So AMI, as I told you, it is creating a volume from a root disk, and we will do that when you are doing an EC2 instance classes. That is creation and restoration. When we have our EC2 classes, we will take care of that. So for now, we talked about creation, encryption, resizing, and snapshots. Is anybody not comfortable with these 4 topics in terms of EBS volumes? Please raise your hands or put your hands to your keyboard and type something in your chat so that we will rectify it here itself. All good? At least I would like the confirmation that all is good. Anything? Okay.
Naveen, I have a small question.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Please say your name in the beginning. I am not familiar with your voice.
Anil here.
Yeah, go ahead, Anil.
In this case, we have seen one disk with one snapshot. If I have 10 disks,
yeah,
how do I create a snapshot and restore it to other machine?
Well, it is laborious. In other words, human intensive. You need to manually create the snapshots for each and every one of them by selecting one.
Oh.
That is when companies, what they do is they usually have a script and in that script they will just give a parameter as these are the volume IDs that I want to give a snapshot for, take a snapshot for. And this script will usually be written in Boto or in Lambda, and it will take the snapshot for you. So in other words, always you need to remember what is the volume IDs that I want to take snapshot for. It might be 10 or 100, and I will have to run that script for that.
Okay.
And let us say 10, 20 volumes and all is for very, very big enterprises. Because as I told you, each volume is capable of storing 16 terabytes of data. That is a volume, each volume is the size of 16 terabytes. So you won't find many instances with the multiple volumes. Probably you'll find 2 or 3, and each of them will be big sized, so that the number of snapshots that you will take will be considerably lesser.
Okay.
Yeah, great. And
Yeah, thanks.
thank you. Thanks for that question.
Navi.
Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. For example, I
No,
created
this is
EBS
Ganesh.
value.
One by one, I think Ganesh and Mahendra are talking. Okay, Mahendra, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Yeah. For example, I created EBS value in provision IOPS state,
Yeah.
but my instance is created under the general purpose IOPS.
Okay.
Can I add the EBS value into that instance?
There is a matrix. For example, there are instances like T2, that is a very, very smallest size instance. Those instances
Okay.
will not support provisioned volumes. Instances like M series, M3, M4, or G series,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, C series, which is compute optimized,
Yeah.
can support.
Yeah. C4C.
Yes, you're right. So in other words, not all EBS volumes are supported in all instances, all servers. So when you're choosing your instance type, you need to be very careful. So we are at the right place. If you remember, we are the best practices. And one of the best practices is to choose the right instance and the right volumes for you. I was about to
For
touch.
example, I can. Yeah. For example, I can choose compute optimized, so that time I can use provision IOPS.
Exactly.
Okay. In case of general, we have to use the general purpose IOPS.
Yes.
But actually, we don't know which instance. For example, I'm doing AWS training. So that time, for example, I need a memory optimized R3 instance I need. So that time, which IOPS I need, actually I don't know. But how can I know? R3 means
I have
memory.
shared another screen, Mahendra, there, which
Okay.
when you're choosing an IO ops, it is not like some random number that you will choose. It was mostly pertaining to an application. You would have done some performance testing, or you would have a rough idea, like SAP says that I need this much of IOPS, or DB2 says this much of IOPS. Then you will have a rough idea
Okay.
where to start. So in the chart that I am showing, so if you have a requirement of IOPS of greater than 65,000, you straight away go to an I2 instance. So
Okay.
if you have a lesser than 65,000 IOPS requirement, then you talk about what is the latency that I can wait for, that is amount of time I can wait. If I want it quick as soon as possible, I do an I2 instance. If I can wait for a single digit millisecond latency, and then the next question becomes what is cost and performance. And before I run through this entire slide, this is not like a gold standard. This is a how you need to think. The question that you asked me is,
Yeah.
how do I know what IOPS I need? What is the instance I need? So the question becomes, what is the IOPS, and what is the latency that I can wait, and what is important to me, cost or performance? That is what you need to remember from this slide, or what I'm saying. So these are the parameters which will help you to choose your instance types, and whether you want to go with the IOPS optimized EBS volume or a throughput optimized EBS volume. So basically,
Finally, based upon the input-output operation, you can choose the volume types.
exactly. And
Okay. Right. Thank
how
you.
do I know IOPS is, you need to start with your vendor, whether your vendor is
Yeah.
specifically
Okay.
saying this much of IOPS I need, or you need to do some
Yeah.
performance testing, and then I start fine tuning it. So that is what I said.
Okay.
Start with general purpose, then you move to an optimized instance. Don't start with an optimized instance in the beginning itself. You will be beating
Right. Right.
yourself to optimize it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That's enough.
Okay. Guys, do you have time for another 10 minutes, or do we have a hard stop to stop it here? Because I thought best practices I will cover today. If no, everybody is having other businesses, then we can stop it here and continue the best practices tomorrow.
Hey, this is Durai. So I'm really running out of time. So I have some production issues. So I need to check on that.
Okay, great then. So tomorrow we will see the best practices. Already we saw one slide. We'll see the security, other aspects of it tomorrow then.
Thank you.
And
And again, I have one question.
yeah, Durai, if you have to drop off, you can drop off. I'm not continuing anymore on the session itself, just answering questions here.
Thank you, sir. So I need to drop off. Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted somebody. Can you please go ahead with the question?
Yeah. Anyway, this is Ganesh.
Yeah, Ganesh, go ahead.
Actually, I taken the backup. I taken the snapshot OS disk.
Okay.
I can attach to this to EC2, and then I can boot with this value.
Yes, you can. That is what I showed you about moving.
Usually we are launching the instance with the AMI backup, but I can boot with this snapshot disk.
Yeah, from the snapshot, you need to create a volume, and from that volume, you will mount it to a new server, or you will create a new server.
Okay. Thank you.
So what I wanted to show here is there anybody else having any other questions here? Srujan, are you able to follow me? I understand you have a extensive, anybody with Solaris experience, you don't even have to talk about these things. It is very natural for them.
Yeah, it's clear for me.
Okay. I will have another class which talks about S3 volumes down the line. To after EBS, I will go back to S3. I'm trying to have two more guys joining in, so I thought I will combine you guys with them and have a session on S3 on how to use S3. With that, we will cover most of the storage part. So if there are no other questions, then I would like to close the session here.